Okay, this is section 1.414. Determining equations of lines. Recall slope-intercept equation y is equal to mx plus b, or you can rewrite that as f of x, since f of x and y actually are one and the same. If we know the slope and the y-intercept of a line, we can find an equation of the line using what's called the slope-intercept equation. There's a video that I've got inside of, you can see it in Google Slides, and you've got it on today's Canvas module. Anyways, a line has a slope of a negative 7/9 and a y-intercept of 0.16. Find the equation of the line. We use the slope-intercept equation and substitute in place of m. We're going to substitute in negative 7/9, and for the y-intercept, we're going to substitute in 16. Notice 0.16 is just the ordered pair. This tells me it's on the y-axis, right? 0.16. When it comes time to use the b value, we're just using the 16. All right, so there's the equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So in place of m, I'm substituting in what he told me the slope was negative 7/9, and then the b value, we know the y-intercept was 16, so pretty straightforward. In place of b, I'm substituting 16. In place of the slope, I'm substituting in negative 7/9. He says you can write this as y equals negative 7/9 x plus 16, or you can write it as f of x. Y and f of x, one and the same. Change is slightly different. Now it gives me the slope and it gives me a point. He no longer gives me the y-intercept, which made life so much easier. Well, now he gives me a point, which is going to entail just a little bit more work. We start out using the slope-intercept equation. There it is. In place of the m value, I'm substituting in what he told me m was, minus 2/3 the slope, plus the b value. Now, the idea is I need to know the b value. I need to know where this line cuts across the y-axis. And to do that, I'm going to use the 2 points that he gave me. The point he gave me here, that this line goes through, this negative 3 and 6. In place of y, I'm going to substitute in 6. In place of x, I'm going to substitute negative 3. Solving it, I'll know what b is. And once I know what b is, I'll pop it right in here, and I'll have my equation. All right, so there it is. Y equals mx plus b. The slope is, I was told, was negative 2/3. In place of y, I'm substituting in the y, the ordinate of this point he gave me, 6. And in place of x, I'm substituting in negative 3. Doing the multiplication here, negative 2/3 times minus 3 is 2. Subtracting 2 on both sides, lo and behold, b is equal to 4. So now I know the slope and I know the b value. And now I can, in place of b right here, substitute what I know b is equal to, positive 4. And once again, he's saying I can write it this way, y equals minus 2/3 x plus 4, or write it as f of x. It wouldn't make a difference. All right, here's a video that you'll see in the module. You can also click on it in the Google Slides. All right, so we go from slope-intercept form to what's called point-slope equation. And all we did here was to take the slope form and do some cross multiplication. We come up with this formula, y minus y1 equal to m times x minus x1. The point that he gives me will be referred to as x1 and y1. You can also refer to it as a and b. These two are synonymous equations. He's calling y1 the b value and calling x1 the a value. I prefer this. Y introduce an a and a b. Let's keep it simple. All right. So first thing we need to know is the slope. He doesn't give me the slope. If you look back, all right, in fact, he just gives me 2 points. All right, so first thing I need to do is to, find the equation of a line that contains these 2 points. Notice he doesn't give me the slope at all. Doesn't give me the slope, doesn't give me the y-intercept, just gives me 2 points. So first thing I need to do is to take these 2 points, use the slope formula, calculate the slope. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 1 minus x sub 2, which is 2. X sub 2 minus x sub 1, which is 2. All right, -1 -3 is -7. 1 -2 is -1. Signs are the same. Quotient is positive. So I know my slope is 7. Now, to continue on, I could use either one of these points, the 2, 3, or the 1, -4. What I need to do is use either one of those points to solve for my b value, my y-intercept. I know the slope. And I would suggest is use the one that maybe didn't have any negative signs in it, or use the point that had the smaller of the two numbers. You want to make it easiest you can for yourself. All right, so there's the equation. All right, point slope. So he decided to use the 0.23. So in place of y1, he substituted in 3. In place of x1, he substituted in 2. And multiplying, distributing the 7x, 7 times the -2 minus 14. And he's going to add 3 to both sides and come up with the equation y equals 7x minus 11. Or you could write that as f of x equals 7x minus 11. So two things. One, you had to start out by using the 2 points to find the slope. Once you knew the slope, you could choose either 0.23 or the 0.1, -4. Substitute that into your equation here, the point slope formula, and solve it for your, well, actually, um, yeah, that's all we're doing here is substituting in those two values. We're not solving for b, we're just actually getting the entire equation. All right, by utilizing those 2 points, we would come up. Actually, we did find what we were looking for here was this b value, this -11 over here, which was the y-intercept. All right, what do we got? Parallel lines. Parallel lines have the same slope, right? They never intersect, so they slant the same way. Parallel, parallel. Notice the slopes 2 and 2. Vertical lines are always parallel to each other. This slope is 3. This guy is 1/2. Obviously not parallel. Perpendicular lines. Horizontal and vertical lines are always perpendicular. Perpendicular lines meet to form a right angle. These guys are not perpendicular. Here's what he says. Lines that are perpendicular have slopes whose product is -1. Another way of thinking about that, you can say lines that are perpendicular have slopes that are negative reciprocals of one another. All right. Notice the case here. -1/2 times 2, the product of those two slopes of this line and this line, -1/2 times 2 equals -1. Or I can say the negative reciprocal of -1/2 is +2, or the negative reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2, or 2/1, is 1/2, and the negative of that is -1/2. Negative reciprocals are simply stated, lines are perpendicular if the product of their slopes equals -1. -1/2 times +2, that equals -1. These guys meet to form a right angle. They are perpendicular. Lines are also perpendicular if one is vertical and one is horizontal. All right. Here we have it right here. All right. Determine which of the following pairs of lines is parallel, perpendicular, or neither. What we need to do is to put these into y equals mx plus b format, find out what the slopes are. All right. If the slopes are identical, we have parallel lines. If the product of the slopes equals -1, we have perpendicular lines. If neither of those things happen, then we have neither perpendicular nor parallel. Solve each equation for y. All right, so in this first equation, I subtracted 2 on both sides. And on the second equation, I subtracted 5y on both sides and then divided. I subtracted 5y on both sides. Take that back. I subtracted x on both sides. I'll get it straight right here. I subtracted x on both sides, and then I divided through by 5. All right, so notice, here's the slope of this first line, 5. Here's the slope of the second line, -1/5. Now he says, hey, if I take 5 and I multiply it by -1/5, I get a product of -1. Therefore, the lines are perpendicular. Or I could have said the negative reciprocal. Well, the negative of positive is a negative. The reciprocal of 5 is 1/5. 5 and -1/5 are negative reciprocals. Another way of proving that the lines are perpendicular. Determining whether these two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we solve each for y. First thing I'm doing here is subtracting 4x on both sides, dividing through by 2. Slope of this first line is a negative 2. Second line, I'm just interchanging left and right. I don't need to know what negative y is. I want to know what positive y is. So I'll multiply this whole thing through by a negative. And notice slope here is negative 2. The slope of the second line is also negative 2. Your two lines are parallel. They have identical slopes since the slopes are the same. And the y-intercepts are different. If the y-intercepts were exactly the same, you'd have the same line. I guess you couldn't say they were parallel because they'd be the same line. But all I'm interested in here is the fact that this line has a slope of negative 2. This one identical. Lines are parallel. And you see as I graphed them there, they are indeed, they never meet, they're parallel lines. Same idea. What's the story with these two lines? I'm going to solve each for y. Subtracting 2. This is interesting because if I subtract, well, no, I take that back. All I'm doing here is interchanging. They flip sides. Take the right side, bring it to the left to the right. Slope is 2. Here I'm going to have to subtract 3x on both sides. Notice slope here is 2, slope here is negative 3. The product of these two is negative 6. It's not negative 1. They're not negative reciprocals of one another. 2 does not equal negative 3, so they're not parallel. So you would answer neither. These lines are neither parallel nor are they perpendicular. Nothing going on there. In graphing them, you can see that they are not perpendicular and they sure as heck aren't parallel. All right, so the last part here is we need to write an equation. But to come up with an equation, we need to know the basic information. The minimum amount of information we need to know is a point and a slope. So he gives me the point. All right, so to come up with an equation of a line, I need to know the slope. He doesn't tell me the slope. He does say that this line is to be perpendicular to this line. Well, if it's going to be perpendicular to the line he gives me, then the slope of my new line has to be the negative reciprocal of the line he gives me. So I got to take the line he gives me, find that slope, and then use the negative reciprocal to come up with the equation of the line I'm looking for. All right, so solving for y, I find that the line he gives me, slope is 1/4. Now, my line is to be perpendicular to that. All right, so if my line is going to be perpendicular to that, he says the line, well, first of all, you're doing parallel. The line parallel to the given line has the same slope, 1/4. We're coming up with a line that's parallel first. All right, yeah, all right. Part A is parallel, then part B, he wants perpendicular. Okay, I get it. All right, so the line he gave me, I solved for the slope, the B value here, by dividing through by 4. I want to come up with a line that goes through this point and is parallel to this line. Therefore, it'll have the exact same slope, 1/4. Now, we're going to substitute 1/4 in for m and then use the point to negative 3 to come up with the equation. We're using what's called a point-slope formula. All right, so y minus the y value, which is minus 3, equals a slope. Now, my line will have the identical slope of the line he gave me since it's parallel to it. And then in place of x1 here, we're substituting 2. Doing the algebra, fairly straightforward. Minus and minus is a plus. Distributing the 1/4 times both the terms. 1/4 times x is 1/4 x. 1/4 times a minus 2 is a minus 1/2. And now what I need to do is to get this solved for y. I need to add 3 on both sides. All right, so adding 3 on both sides. Take that back. We're not adding 3. We're going to be subtracting 3. Minus 3 is the same as minus 6/2. Minus 1/2 and a minus 6/2 is a minus 7/2. All right, so you get some fractions going on here. Subtracting 3 on both sides. All right, minus 1/2 and a minus 3 combines a minus 7/2. So there's a line that is parallel to the line that he gave me. Now we want a new line that is perpendicular to the line he gave me. Now we calculated the slope of the line he gave us as 1/4. if I'm coming up with an equation of a line perpendicular, my slope of my perpendicular buddy, so to speak, is the negative reciprocal. The negative reciprocal of 1/4 is -4. Notice -4 times 1/4 is that product of -1. It's the same idea as the previous one. We're going to, in place of y1, we're going to substitute -3. In place of x, substitute in 2. And use -4 for the slope. The negative reciprocal of the line that I was given. All right, so doing a substitution, this pre-works straight out. Minus times a minus, and then subtracting 3 on both sides. And you can see that the slope is indeed -4. If you wanted to, you could check out that this point was actually part of this line. -3 would be the same thing as -4 times 2, which is -8 plus 5. -3 equals -3. You could actually check this out to make sure it goes through that point. And of course, you see that the slope is indeed -4. Okie doke. All right. So I hope that helps.